Let me tell you how everything went upside down in my family, all because of a trip I'll never forget. My name is Robert Wilson, and I spent my entire life working with my hands, running a small chain of auto repair shops across Minnesota after losing my wife, Linda. Everything I did was for my only son, Tyler. One cold evening in Minneapolis, I was sorting invoices at my old wooden desk when the front door slammed open. In strode Tyler, rain dripping from his jacket, his sneakers squeaking against the hardwood. He didn't bother with small talk. "Dad, I need $5,000. Tonight," he snapped. I remember freezing mid-sentence, my hand still gripping a pen. That voice, that edge, it wasn't a request. It was a demand. I told him, "Son, you know I just transferred your monthly allowance last week." He scoffed. $3,000 barely covers my rent. Don't you get it? That's nothing. You have all this money, but you still act like you're some big boss." That hit me hard. I straightened my back, military habit kicking in. I tried to keep my voice calm. "Tyler, we've talked about this. You need to find steady work, learn some responsibility." He laughed coldly. "Yeah, responsibility. Once you're gone, I'll be running your business better than you ever did." His words stung more than I'd like to admit. He wasn't just angry. I saw something colder in his eyes. Greed. Calculation. It was as if he'd already decided the best day for my funeral. Before I could answer, Tyler turned on his heel and stormed out, slamming the door so hard that the family photo on the mantel rattled. Linda's smiling face shook behind the glass, and I stood there, wondering where I'd gone wrong. Later that night, I found myself looking through old albums. There was Linda, holding 8-year-old Tyler at a baseball game. Memories of her funeral came back, Tyler in his only suit, clutching my hand. I'd promised her I'd give him everything she never got to. And so I had. Maybe too much. Every page in those albums was a reminder. The private school, the brand new car for his birthday, the tuition I could barely afford. I'd convinced myself that showering him with gifts would make up for Linda's absence, for my long work hours. But all I'd done was raise a stranger, one who saw my life's work as nothing but a pot of gold. By the weekend, I found myself sitting in Linda's old armchair, her presence a whisper in the quiet house. She would have seen this coming. She always had a sharper sense for people than I did. Sunday, I put away the albums and sat back at my desk. I knew I needed to prepare for the worst. As I drafted legal documents, my phone buzzed with a call from Tyler. "Hey, Dad, how are you doing?" His voice was so cheerful it made my teeth ache. I waited. He rushed into a proposal. "Let's go camping, just us. Like old times. The Superior National Forest. Everything's already paid for, Dad, and the trip's this week. My friends bailed, but I don't want it to go to waste." All my instincts told me something was off. Tyler hadn't wanted to go camping with me since he was a teenager. "It's sudden," I said. "I know, but I figured we could reconnect, just father and son out in nature, like when Mom was around." He pushed. There was an urgency in his voice, a desperation to push me into agreeing. In the end, despite my suspicions, I agreed. Maybe, just maybe, I thought, there was still a way to fix what had broken between us. But as I packed for the trip, leaving the newly signed legal documents in my bag, just in case, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking straight into a test I might not survive. 3 days later, I was standing in line at Minneapolis, St. Paul Airport, my travel bag feeling heavier than it should. Tyler was already waiting by the gate, looking a little too energetic for someone who supposedly wanted to unplug. His backpack was brand new, tags still dangling. "You ready, Dad?" He grinned, too wide, like he was trying to sell me something. I kept my tone light, but I watched him the way I'd learned in the army, noting the little twitches, the nervous glance at his phone. "You seem excited, son. When's the last time you dragged me out to the woods?" He laughed it off. Come on, it'll be great. You'll see. Our first flight took us to Duluth, then a rental car north into the wilds. Tyler chatted the entire drive, but I could tell he was performing, telling me about podcasts on survival, how he wanted to take wildlife photos for Instagram, how everyone was going off-grid these days. But every few minutes, he checked his phone, thumbs flying over the screen like he was waiting for a stock to rise or fall. We stopped in a little town called Ely to pick up supplies. Tyler insisted on extra gear, fancy flashlights, fire starters, rope, a first aid kit so big it looked like he planned to open his own field hospital. The old guy at the counter raised an eyebrow at the pile of stuff. You planning to stay out all winter? Tyler just flashed his best trust fund kit smile and swiped my credit card. Back on the road, the forest thickened, pines closing in on both sides. The sky was low and gray, the kind of Minnesota spring that keeps even the toughest hikers humble. Tyler grew quieter as we left cell service behind. Beautiful out here, I said, mostly to fill the silence. Yeah. Isolated, he replied. He kept checking the sky, pretending to look for weather, but I could see the tension building in his jaw. As dusk fell, we pulled off on a lonely stretch of gravel, miles from any town. This is the spot, he declared. We parked by the edge of a deep forest, the ground soft with moss and last year's leaves. I scanned the area out of habit, looking for escape routes, water sources, places to shelter if something went wrong. Tyler hauled his overstuffed pack out of the car, wincing a little at the weight. Need a hand? I asked. He shook his head. Got it. We set off down a barely marked trail, the forest closing in quickly. The air was alive with the scent of damp earth and spruce. I took the lead, my boots finding old muscle memory, my breath steady. Tyler followed, quieter now, the bravado slipping as we left the safety of the car behind. After about an hour, we reached a small clearing beside a winding creek. Let's camp here, I said. Tyler dropped his bag and flopped onto a log, already out of breath. He tried to set up the tent, but it was obvious he hadn't practiced. Poles tangled, stakes bent the wrong way. I helped him, but kept my tone patient, the way Linda used to when he struggled with homework. As I strung up our food bag, Tyler wandered to the water's edge. Dad, you ever think about, what happens after you're gone? He asked suddenly, his voice too casual. Getting morbid on me, son? I forced a chuckle, but my guard was up. He shrugged. I don't know. You've got those shops. The house. You ever make plans, for the future? I looked at him carefully, trying to read his intentions. Your mom and I set up all the legal stuff, Ty. Why? He kicked at the mud. Never mind. Forget I said anything. That night, after a simple meal, we sat by the fire. The woods were alive with the distant sounds of owls and the wind moving through the trees. I tried to bring back the old feeling, the simple warmth of being father and son under the stars, but Tyler was restless, glancing into the shadows, pretending to listen as I told a story about getting lost during a thunderstorm back in my army days. When it was his turn for the night watch, he volunteered a little too eagerly. I want to listen to the sounds, soak it in. I'll wake you in a couple hours. I crawled into my sleeping bag, but sleep wouldn't come. Through the thin fabric of the tent, I could hear him fidgeting, moving around the fire, then nothing. Just careful, deliberate silence. Not the kind you make when you're appreciating nature, the kind you make when you're planning something. The first faint light of dawn brought a chill that worked its way into my bones. When I stepped out of the tent, Tyler was already up, repacking his gear with military precision he'd never shown before. What's the hurry? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. He didn't look at me. Weather's changing. We should head out early. I studied his face, tight, unreadable, determined. My old instincts screamed at me. Something was wrong. The camping trip was not about reconnecting. Tyler had a plan, and I was at the center of it. But I wasn't just some tired old man. I'd built my life on surviving, adapting, and never, ever backing down. As the sun rose through the pines, I tightened my boots and readied myself. Whatever Tyler was planning, he was about to find out that his old man had a few surprises left. We set out early, dew still clinging to the grass, a fog drifting over the forest floor. I led the way, following a trail only half visible beneath the leaves. Tyler said little, head down, boots crunching softly behind me. His mood had changed overnight. If he'd once been eager to impress or reconnect, it was gone now, replaced by an edginess that put every instinct I had on high alert. After an hour, the trail grew rougher, winding deeper into country most folks from Minneapolis never see. The pines grew thicker, blocking out the sky. The ground sloped down toward a hidden creek, water running fast and cold. I stopped to check our map, more out of habit than need, but mostly to gauge Tyler's reaction. "You ever think about moving back to the city?" he asked suddenly. "Not really," I replied. "This is home now. Never liked the city much after your mom passed." He nodded but didn't look at me. He was scanning the trees, fidgeting with his pack straps. "I guess you got everything you want out here, huh?" "Not everything," I said quietly, "but enough." We crossed a fallen log, the creek rushing underneath. My knees complained, but I kept moving. Tyler, for all his expensive gear, was not built for this kind of travel. He lagged behind, sweating, breathing hard, but every time I offered help, he waved me off. He was determined, I'll give him that. Just not sure what for. By midday, the sun burned through the fog, and we stopped for water. As I refilled my canteen, Tyler wandered a little way off, pretending to look at wildflowers. I watched him out of the corner of my eye. He pulled out his phone, even though we were far out of range, and tried to make a call. His voice was low, nearly a whisper, but out here, sound carries. I caught only a few words. "Yeah. It's done. He's with me." "No, not yet." He snapped the phone shut as I approached, plastering on a fake smile. "Just checking the time. Battery's dead anyway." I nodded, not buying it for a second. "You know, out here, time's measured by the sun, not by screens." He gave a hollow laugh. "Guess you're right, old man." We walked on. Every so often, I noticed signs of wildlife, a line of deer tracks, the claw marks of a black bear on a tree, a sudden burst of grouse from the underbrush. Tyler seemed oblivious, lost in his own head. Maybe he was working up the nerve for whatever he'd come out here to do. Around 2, we reached a fork in the trail. One path curved west, toward a known campsite. The other, barely a trail at all, snaked deeper into the wilderness. Tyler stepped ahead. "Let's take this way," he said, gesturing toward the wild path. "You sure?" I asked. "No signs, no markers. That's pretty rough country." He forced confidence into his voice. "Isn't that what you always taught me? Take the road less traveled?" I shrugged. "All right. Lead the way." We hiked for another hour, the woods pressing close on all sides. Tyler grew silent, lost in thought. Every so often, he glanced back at me, sizing me up. I made sure to keep a few steps behind, letting him think he was in charge. Eventually, the trail vanished completely, and we stood in a shadowy glen, surrounded by thick undergrowth and towering oaks. No wind, no birds, just the sound of our breathing and the distant rush of water. Tyler set his pack down and turned to face me. "Listen, Dad. There's something I need to say." He paused, gathering himself, and for a moment I saw the little boy he used to be, nervous before a big confession. But the words that came out were nothing I could have prepared for. "I'm done, Dad. Done with you running my life, with all your rules, your lectures. I need you to understand that I'm not your little boy anymore. I can take care of myself." I nodded slowly. All right, Tyler. If that's what you need, I get it. He shook his head. No, you don't. You never did. You think you can control everything, even now. But out here, you're not in charge anymore. The anger in his voice was raw, sharper than I'd ever heard it. Before I could answer, he bent down, grabbed his bag, and pulled out my own wallet, the one I'd tucked away for safekeeping. You won't need this, he said, tossing it into the brush. I stood perfectly still, not trusting myself to speak. You're good at surviving, right? He spat. Let's see how you do without your maps, your food, your compass. Maybe the woods will teach you something about control. He turned and walked away, pushing through the brush, not looking back. For a minute, I just listened to the sound of his footsteps fading into the distance, then to the utter silence that followed. My own son, the boy I'd raised and sacrificed for, had just left me alone, unprepared, 30 miles from the nearest town. I took a deep breath and looked up at the sunlight filtering through the trees. If this was the test, I'd survived worse. I'd find a way out of these woods, and when I did, Tyler Wilson was going to have to face the father he thought he'd left behind. I watched my son's back vanish into the trees, the branches snapping behind him, and then, just like that, he was gone. No last look. No apology. Just the deep silence of the forest settling over me like a heavy blanket. For a moment, anger and disbelief battled inside my chest, but training and instinct took over. If Tyler thought he could break me out here, he'd forgotten who raised him. First things first. I checked my pockets. He hadn't thought to take my folding knife, the one I kept for fishing trips, nor the small lighter I'd always carried since my army days. He'd taken my wallet and most of my gear, but he'd left me with just enough to remind me this was a test, not a straight-up execution. My boots crunched on the pine needles as I walked in a slow circle, orienting myself. The sun was westering, the sky streaked orange through the canopy, 2, maybe 3 hours of daylight left. The creek was north, but the nearest sign of civilization was anyone's guess. Tyler hadn't just abandoned me. He'd driven us so far off the trail that even the wildlife seemed to have cleared out. Shelter first. I gathered branches, pine boughs, anything I could find. Survival was second nature, always keep dry, always stay warm. I built a lean-to against the largest oak I could find, layering the roof thick enough to shed dew and the chill of night. With every stroke, every knot tied, I could feel my anger sharpening into focus. As I worked, old memories flickered through my mind, of Linda, her gentle way with our boy, the way she'd laugh and call me Bear when I came home covered in grease after 12 hours at the shop. I remembered Tyler at 6, lost in the Minneapolis Zoo, screaming for me, clinging to my leg when I found him. When did that frightened little boy turn into a man who could do this to his own father? Night came down fast. The Minnesota woods can be as unforgiving as any battlefield. I sparked the lighter, set a small fire with dry twigs, and kept it close. Wolves called from somewhere distant. An owl glided by on silent wings. I kept one eye open, just like I'd done in the desert years ago, knowing full well that out here, I was both the hunter and the hunted. Every hour, I listened for footsteps, for the crackle of brush, hoping for rescue or even Tyler's return, but there was nothing but the sound of my own breath and the shifting branches above me. I thought about all the things I wished I'd said, how much I missed Linda, how hard it had been to raise Tyler alone, how many times I'd prayed he'd turn out better than me. Dawn was slow and gray. My joints ached as I stood, stretching carefully. I looked around, no sign of Tyler, no sign of anyone. The fire had burned down to ash, and the woods were cold and empty. Time to move. I broke off a stout branch for a walking stick, checked the sun's angle, and headed west, hoping the land would slope toward a river or road. Along the way, I left markers, broken branches, stones stacked in small piles, just in case anyone came looking. Hunger gnawed at me by midday. I chewed on wild berries, careful to avoid the red ones, and found a few edible plants I remembered from survival school. At one point, I scared a rabbit out of a thicket, but my old reflexes weren't quick enough to catch it. Water was harder to find. My throat was raw before I finally stumbled across a muddy stream. I filtered what I could through a scrap of shirt and drank, willing my stomach to settle. Hours passed. Every so often, I'd find myself talking aloud, cursing Tyler, cursing myself for letting things come to this. All that work, all those sacrifices, and this is how it ends? Not if I have anything to say about it. As the afternoon faded, I heard something, a faint, mechanical buzz not far off. I froze, listening hard. Could it be a rescue team? Or just some weekend hunters, or a logging crew? Either way, it was my best shot. I followed the sound, stumbling through brush, branches tearing at my sleeves, my boots sinking in mud. Finally, I broke into a clearing, and there, parked under a stand of birch, were 3 men on ATVs. All of them turned at once, surprised to see a battered old man appear out of nowhere. The leader, a broad-shouldered guy in his 40s with a red beard, killed his engine and stood. "Sir? You all right?" he called, voice edged with concern. I staggered closer, wiping sweat from my brow. "My son, he left me out here. I need help." Their faces darkened. "That's not just wrong," said one. "That's a crime." The bearded man introduced himself as Dave. He and his friends were weekend fishermen, knew the woods like the backs of their hands. They gave me water, let me catch my breath. "You're a lucky man, sir. This part of the forest, you could have wandered for days without seeing a soul." They loaded me up on the back of an ATV and promised to take me to their cabin. As the trees whipped past, I felt the numbness in my chest slowly give way to a burning determination. Tyler thought he could get rid of me and walk away with everything I'd built. He had no idea just how wrong he was. Dave and his friends took me to a weathered lakeside cabin tucked between stands of birch and pine. The place was simple: bunk beds, a cast iron stove, a battered old radio. But after 2 days lost in the forest, it felt like the Ritz. I washed up as best I could, warmed my hands by the fire, and tried not to let the shaking in my limbs show. Dave's wife, Karen, brewed strong black coffee and handed me a mug. "You must have nerves of steel," she said. "Most folks left out there wouldn't have made it." I managed a tired smile, thinking of Linda, of long-ago camping trips, of all the ways I'd tried to teach Tyler about grit, about survival, about sticking together. The others wanted to call the police right away. "What your son did, sir, that's not just abandonment. That's attempted murder out here," said Dave's friend Tom. "You want to press charges?" For a moment, I hesitated. Part of me still saw Tyler as the little boy who'd run to me after nightmares, who'd wanted his dad to make everything right. But the pain of betrayal cut deeper than any wilderness wound. I nodded. "Let's call." We used Dave's radio to reach the nearest ranger station. Within an hour, a pair of deputies showed up, bristling with questions, notebooks in hand. I told them the story from start to finish, no details spared. How Tyler had brought me out, taken my gear, my wallet, then left me alone, saying, "Let's see how you do, old man." The deputies' faces hardened. "We'll put out a bulletin. If your son's still in the area, we'll find him," said one. "Do you have anywhere to go? Anyone we can call?" "I'll be fine," I answered. "I just want to get back to town, sort this out, and make sure my business and estate are safe." They drove me back to Ely in their squad car. I stared out the window as the woods receded, a knot tightening in my gut with every mile. I thought about what waited for me: my shops, my home, the empty silence where Linda's laughter used to echo, the legal documents I'd tucked away in my travel bag. Tyler's face, so familiar yet so changed, haunted me in every reflection. When we reached town, I checked into a small motel, used the phone to call my lawyer, Mr. Jenkins, back in Minneapolis. He picked up on the second ring. Robert! I was just going over your paperwork. Is everything all right? Not even close, I said, voice raw. I need your help. My son tried to strand me in the woods for dead. I want every protection possible on my business, my estate, and my accounts. Can you meet me tomorrow? Of course, Jenkins replied. And Robert, don't worry. I'll handle everything. That night, lying on the motel's thin mattress, I replayed the last few days in my mind, piecing together every sign I'd missed, every warning I'd brushed off. I wondered if I'd been blind, or just hopeful. I thought of Linda again, her voice in my head, don't ever give up on your family, but never let them destroy you. At dawn, I made myself a promise. Tyler wasn't going to get a penny unless he earned it, and he was going to face the consequences of what he'd done. The next day, Mr. Jenkins met me at the motel with a stack of papers an inch thick. I've already called the banks. Everything's locked down, no transfers, no access, nothing without your signature in person. We can update your will today. If you'd like, we can even set up a trust that donates everything to charity if anything happens to you under suspicious circumstances. That's exactly what I want, I said. Make it ironclad. We spent hours going through every detail, Jenkins careful and precise. By noon, I'd signed a new will, a set of instructions for my shop managers, a durable power of attorney, and letters to be sent to Tyler only if he ever tried to challenge the estate. You're protected now, Robert, Jenkins said quietly. I'm sorry about your son, but I've seen families destroyed by less. After lunch, I called the main shop in Minneapolis, spoke with my oldest foreman, Mike Sanders. Mike, if Tyler comes around asking for anything, you call me first. Don't give him a dime, don't let him in the office. Understood? You got it, Mr. Wilson. He came by last week, actually, asking about your accounts, who had keys, all that. I felt my jaw tighten. Thanks, Mike. Just keep your eyes open. By sunset, word had spread in town. Old Man Wilson was back, and something big had gone wrong. Some of my friends stopped by the motel, offering coffee, pie, even just a friendly ear. In small towns, people take care of their own. That night, I slept a little better, knowing that for the first time in years, everything I'd built was protected, not just from strangers, but from the very person I'd once loved most. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. Tyler would come back, one way or another. And this time, I would be ready. Word travels fast in Minnesota, even faster when there's family trouble involved. The next day, I got a call from the sheriff's office. Mr. Wilson, we picked up your son early this morning. He was trying to head south, told a strange story about getting lost, said he was looking for help. We brought him in for questioning. My pulse quickened. I thanked the deputy and drove down to the station. Tyler sat slumped on a hard bench, his clothes rumpled, hair a mess, face paler than I'd ever seen it. When he spotted me, his eyes flashed, first with surprise, then something like fear, and then anger. He tried to stand, but the deputy kept a firm hand on his shoulder. Robert, we'll give you a moment, the sheriff said, stepping out. The door clicked shut, leaving just the two of us in the stark white room. I looked at my son, really looked at him. He looked nothing like the confident young man who'd stormed into my house demanding money. He was a child again, but with harder edges, broken in ways I'd never wanted to see. You could have killed me out there, Tyler, I said quietly. He sneered. You survived, didn't you? You're always talking about how tough you are. Guess I was right. My hands clenched, but I kept my voice steady. This isn't a joke. You left me 30 miles from nowhere. You took my wallet, my gear. What did you think was going to happen? He looked away, jaw tight. I just wanted you to see what it's like, always struggling. Always alone. You never let me do things my way. Always controlling everything. You never trust me. That's not true, I replied, the old ache in my chest flaring. I gave you every chance. I gave you everything I had, maybe too much. You never wanted for anything. And when your mother died, I did the best I could. He glared at me. You did it for you, not me. You wanted to be the hero. You wanted to keep me close, make me dependent. I shook my head, sadness replacing the anger. That's not love, Tyler. That's resentment. And you've let it poison everything. For a long moment neither of us spoke. The clock on the wall ticked, loud and unforgiving. Finally, Tyler broke the silence. So what now, Dad? You going to press charges? You going to make me pay for what I did? I sighed, feeling the weight of all the years between us. I'm not out for revenge. But you need help, son. You need to take responsibility. You can't run from this. I've talked to my lawyer. Everything I have is protected. You're not getting a dime unless you earn it. He flinched like I'd hit him. You'd really cut me out? After all these years? I already did, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. It's done. The shops, the house, the accounts, it's all locked down. If you want a future, you have to make one yourself. He dropped his head into his hands, shoulders shaking. For a moment, I wondered if he was crying, but when he looked up, his eyes were dry, full of rage and something like grief. I hope you're happy, old man. Hope it was all worth it. The door opened. The sheriff stepped in, face grim. We're pressing charges, Tyler. What you did out there, abandonment, theft, attempted harm, that's serious. Your father could have died. I stood, feeling both older and stronger than I had in years. I'll do what I have to do. For your sake, and for mine. As I left the station, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and relief. I had lost my son long before that camping trip, but now I understood, sometimes loving someone means protecting them from themselves, and from the damage they're willing to do. Even if it means walking away. In the days that followed, I settled back into my routines. The staff at my shops welcomed me with warm handshakes and quiet understanding. Mike, my foreman, brought me a cup of black coffee and sat with me in the break room. He'll learn, Mr. Wilson. You taught him more than you know. I nodded but didn't answer. At night, I found myself talking to Linda's picture, telling her everything. Sometimes I'd laugh about the absurdity of it all. Sometimes I'd just sit in silence, the ache of regret softened by the knowledge that I'd finally done the right thing, not just for myself, but for Tyler, too. The legal process began to move. The sheriff promised me regular updates, and Jenkins made sure my estate remained untouchable. Tyler was arraigned and released on bail, with a court date looming over his future. Word spread through town, but the judgment in people's eyes wasn't for me. It was for the son who'd crossed every line. One evening, just as the sun was sinking behind the maples, I heard a knock at my door. It was Karen, Dave's wife from the cabin, holding a casserole. Just in case you get tired of your own cooking. She smiled. You've got friends here, Robert. Don't forget that. I thanked her, my heart a little lighter. There was still a long road ahead, but I was walking it on my own terms now. Not as a victim, not as a broken man, but as someone who had finally learned, after all these years, what it really means to be strong. Weeks passed, and the season shifted. Spring deepened in Minnesota, painting every tree and lawn a brighter green. Life in the shop returned to a steady rhythm. Most days I worked alongside my old friends, teaching the apprentices how to coax stubborn engines back to life or showing them the right way to patch a radiator. In quieter moments, I sat in my office, the framed photo of Linda always within reach, her gentle smile a constant reminder that some things never fade, no matter how hard the world gets. The court case moved forward. Tyler's lawyer tried every angle, claimed stress, tried to paint the whole ordeal as a misunderstanding. Even suggested I'd simply gotten lost. But my testimony was clear, and the evidence, the missing gear, the GPS history, the calls Tyler had made, spoke for itself. The judge's expression hardened as the facts unfolded. In the end, Tyler was sentenced to community service, a suspended sentence, and mandatory counseling. He avoided prison, but the message was clear to everyone who mattered. As we left the courtroom, he wouldn't meet my eye. There was no last angry outburst, no apology. Just a silence that seemed heavier than any words. That night, I drove out to the lake by myself, the water still and glassy, moonlight rippling across the surface. I sat on an old bench, hands folded, letting memories rise and settle. I thought of Linda, her laughter, the way she'd braid Tyler's hair when he was a boy, her gentle insistence that love was never about control, but about presence and sacrifice. And I thought about my own choices. I'd spent years mistaking providing for parenting. I'd tried to shield Tyler from every hardship, every disappointment, believing it would help him grow. But sometimes, the more you try to protect someone, the more you deny them the chance to become who they're meant to be. A twig snapped behind me. I turned, expecting a deer, but instead found Karen and Dave walking along the shore. They joined me on the bench without a word, and for a while, we just watched the night deepen around us. "He'll come around one day," Dave said quietly. "It might take time, but he'll remember what you did for him. He'll realize the difference between giving up and letting go." I nodded, feeling something heavy lift inside me. "Maybe. But even if he doesn't, I know I did what was right." A few weeks later, Mike brought in a young man for an interview. Just a kid, really, with grease under his nails and the same restless look I used to see in Tyler's eyes. His name was Ethan. He worked hard, listened more than he talked, and reminded me of what it felt like to want a shot at something better. I took Ethan under my wing, teaching him not just the mechanics of engines, but the patience and grit required to keep going when things fall apart. In him, I found a new kind of hope, a reminder that even when you lose something precious, life always finds a way to bring you new purpose. As summer rolled in, the days stretched longer and lighter. The staff at the shop became more than workers, they were family. We celebrated birthdays, shared potluck dinners, swapped stories of loss and redemption. The town no longer looked at me with pity, but with respect. People knew what I'd been through, and they admired that I hadn't let bitterness take root. One afternoon, as I was closing up the shop, a letter arrived, no return address, just my name written in a shaky hand. I opened it and read Tyler's words. "Dad, I don't expect you to forgive me. Maybe I'll never deserve it. I just wanted you to know I'm sorry for what I did, for everything I've done. You were right about everything, even when I didn't want to hear it. I'm getting help. Maybe someday I can earn back your trust. Love, Tyler." I sat quietly for a long time, the letter trembling in my hands. Forgiveness isn't easy. Some wounds take a lifetime to heal. But as the sun set beyond the rooftops, I realized that the most important lessons I'd ever teach didn't come from a workshop or a ledger. They came from surviving heartbreak, standing up after betrayal, and choosing to live with kindness, even when the world gives you every reason not to. I folded Tyler's letter and placed it next to Linda's photograph. My heart was lighter than it had been in years. The past had brought pain and loss, but the future, at last, felt open again, a road stretching forward, wild and free. And as I locked up my shop for the night, I knew I hadn't just survived. I'd reclaimed my life, on my terms, and with the kind of dignity that no one, not even my own son, could ever take away.